Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Megan, the Faithful Fibromyalgia Warrior. I'm realizing as of today that I seem to be making videos like every couple weeks, and as much as I intend to make videos more often, it just doesn't work out that way. But I used to get so upset with myself for that, and I realized, you know what, maybe I don't have something to say every single day. Maybe all I have is something I need to say every couple weeks as I'm sharing my own progress, as I'm hopefully trying to encourage you guys. And today I was just left with the feeling of, okay, well, let me ask this question, and you guys can message or comment and let me know how you feel about it. But have you ever had those moments, those days where it just feels like everything is going so well? Like things are going well spiritually and health wise and emotionally and physically and everything else. And it's just like you're in the zone. And if the answer is no, that's okay. Don't worry. That's absolutely fine. Not that you need me to for me to say that, but that's okay. Because up until very recently, like over the last few days especially, I wasn't there. I mean, I was getting there little by little, but I certainly wasn't there yet. And I've sort of had, I felt, and I feel that I do, but my faith was really good. It was strong. I believed God was going to continue healing me, helping me get stronger and even more physically healthy and fit. And He has been. He's been helping me. He's helping my muscles get stronger and form as I work out, as I do these great walks I do 3 days a week, on top of any other just smaller walks I take throughout the day. My nutrition has been the same. I've been strict carnivore for 3.5 years. I have no intention of ever going back to anything else because it works for me. So that's been good. But somehow there's been this disconnect, and I don't know how else to explain it other than as much as I've had faith and as much as I have had my diet on pretty straight, I think part of me felt like, well, shouldn't more be happening? Yes, I'd lost weight. Yes, I had reduced a lot of my chronic pain and inflammation symptoms. Yes, things were improving, absolutely. But I still kind of felt like, but shouldn't I be at this point B that I've just decided I have to be at because some people are there? And what I keep forgetting is that it takes everyone time. It takes different amounts of time. And as much as I didn't want to look back and admit it or accept it, I spent decades eating highly inflammatory and processed foods, like from the time I was a kid. Because I don't blame my mom and dad. They absolutely did the best they could. They provided us what they were told were healthy options, which now I know isn't the case. I didn't know that at the time. And what prompted all this is, I don't know if you can tell from this video, you might see that my cheeks have been a bit blotchy. And basically, my skin throughout all of my weight up and downs, throughout my really bad IBS, throughout my bulimia, even with my anxiety and depression being big factors in my life, especially at different points, not lately, but in the past, and sort of self-soothing or self-medicating myself with sweets or fried foods or chips and processed kind of garbage. Even through that, my skin had always been pretty clear and in pretty good condition. And over the last couple of weeks, what I've really noticed, and it was starting to offer me a bit of concern, but then about 3 weeks ago, I noticed I had almost like this rash on my cheeks, just here, and a little bit up here. And I'd never, ever had that before in my life. I would get the occasional blemish during that time of the month, maybe the week before and during, and then it would kind of clear up. But otherwise, my skin has always been pretty clear and in pretty good shape. And all of a sudden, I'm getting this breakout of like this rash, dry, patchy, scaly skin, red bumps, it's not blemishes. It looked like a flare up of really bad rosacea. And so, for the first time in my life, I've had to use special cream on my face to help try to treat that to some degree in the morning and in the evening. And I couldn't figure it out. I mean, I've been carnivore for 3.5 years. I have not eaten carbs in almost 3.5 years, less a couple of cheat days in my very first sort of venturing into this lifestyle. Otherwise, I've been animal meats, like animal protein and fat. That's it. And although I've made a decision to try to eliminate liquid dairy, so milk, from my diet, first of all, let me just quickly say, the only time I really have any dairy is if I am having a cappuccino. So I am actually down to 2 big cups of coffee a day, regular coffee. Anything else, if I have it, it's decaf or water, because ultimately I want to be able to come off all stimulants and just, be as natural and as free of that stuff as possible. That's me personally, okay? But for me, I already know I've already been told I have a lactose intolerance. I was diagnosed with it some years ago. It has definitely factored into my IBS. But I've always been willing to kind of go, well, I feel like a really nice cappuccino. I can put up with the bit of bloating, the little bit of gas for the day if I have a cappuccino. I'm willing to accept that. However, I'm thinking perhaps it's also maybe why this is suddenly so bad. But then I remembered something. So it could be dairy for sure. However, I did go through a couple of periods early in my journey where I did I eliminated all dairy except for butter for a good 30 days. And any sort of redness I did have, definitely that cleared up, but it was never this bad, right? Where it's dry and flaky and itchy and rashy and bumpy. It was never this bad. Typically for me, if I have dairy, it affects my IBS and my gut. So I suddenly remembered something, and this was something Sally K. Norton, who's been on multiple interviews on different people's channels in this space. She's fantastic. She talks all about oxalates and how we get those from all the plants we consume in our diet over years, over periods of years. And certain ones are higher in content than others, whether it's something like cinnamon, black pepper, mushrooms, broccoli, a white potato, or carrots, okay? Any kind of plant potentially has some significant level of oxalate or anti-nutrients in them, okay? And what I remember her saying, and I didn't even think of it until just yesterday, is that a lot of the oxalates that we get in our bodies from eating plants, specifically, a certain amount of those are stored not just in our gut, but they're stored in our fat cells, in our adipose fat tissue over decades, right? So we get so used to having it there, we don't even notice it anymore. But when somebody transitions from a plant, therefore carb, highly concentrated diet, whether you're a vegetarian or vegan or you're just eating a standard Western diet with a lot of plants in it, those all have oxalates. And they get stored in our fat tissues, like most things. So when you transition to keto or carnivore and you stop eating those things, your body is now at the point where it's not trying to store it and figure out what to do with this stuff. Now it's like, oh, there isn't any more coming in. I can start dumping what's in here, okay? And for some people that can result in things like maybe diarrhea, itchy skin, feeling kind of nauseous, having aches and pains they never had before. And it's all part of this what she describes as oxalate dumping. And that can happen sometimes if we transition into keto or carnivore too quickly. But also, as we start to lose fat and we start to burn our own fuel, as we're burning the fuel we've had stored for so long. So we're finally getting rid of these, layers of body fat, and we're burning it. As we're burning it, these oxalates are being released outward and eventually out of the body. And one of the key symptoms is suddenly having really good skin, and then you break out in a rash or blotchy skin because your body is dumping the last of the oxalates that's been held and stored in its adipose fat tissue. Now I'm just paraphrasing. I'm summarizing. She has very specific scientific terminology. If you want to know more details, that's Sally K. Norton, and she's been interviewed by everybody from, Bart Kay to Steak and Butter Gal, which is Bella Ma, and many others. I think she's been interviewed by Rebecca Heichman, who is Tailored Keto Health, and there's, I'm sure, many other places that she has shared. I think she's been on the YouTube channels with Dr. Anthony Chaffee, possibly even with Dr. Ken Berry, if I'm not mistaken. Check it out. I'm not quite sure about the last one, but the other ones I know she's been interviewed by them because I've watched those videos. So if you want the actual scientific breakdown, that's what happens. So if we've been eating like I have, so I'm 51, and if I've been eating plants or food sources that have been super high in oxalates, that have been storing it in my body fat, since, let's just say, why not? We'll throw it out there. Since the time I was 5 and eating solid food, up until 3 years ago, well, my goodness, that's about 40 years worth of oxalates being stored in my body. And as we lose the inflammatory weight, which is, in my case, a lot of it was water weight, but also some fat, sure, but that was gone. But now, as I'm getting down meaner and leaner, yay, it's that last bit of oxalate that's been holding on in the fat cells that my body has been keeping on me up till now. As these are now being burned off more efficiently, more effectively, I'm dumping out more oxalates. And some of you may not even be at this point. Maybe you guys are going through exactly what I'm going through, and you're like, why am I suddenly getting these weird rashes? I've been following this way for a while, had no issues. Why all of a sudden now? Because now your body is like, I don't have to hold on to these things. I can let go of them. I mean, again, that's not the scientific explanation, but that's general person's lay termic description of what happens. And so it's one of the reasons why it's recommended, if you are going to try carnivore or keto, that you do it gradually, because you will not only lose water weight as well as body fat, you will also dump quite a bit of oxalates in the beginning, and then the stuff that has been in there for years that's hanging on to that adipose fat, which is the stuff right around like your organs, that's the last stuff to get burned off. And so it's held on to this for the longest amount of time. And if you've got decades worth of oxalate buildup in there, you're going to have a reaction. Am I going to suddenly stop my walking, stop my exercising and enjoying life and mobility once again? No way, Jose. But I've come to realize, oh, wait a second. Yeah, okay, this can happen. And it's crazy. Or maybe not crazy. It's God, totally a God thing. I was reading the most amazing passages of scripture today, and it just totally inspired me. And I just want to share a little bit with you guys, and I hope that inspires you. I hope it encourages you and helps you wherever you happen to be at today. But the first bit I read was in James chapter 5, in verse 15, and James wrote this: "And the prayer offered in faith will make the sick person well." And further along in the second half of verse 16, he writes, "The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective." And this is so very true. Now, it's not enough to just pray about it. We have to take action steps. And he, James is I love the book of James. It's one of my favorite books of the Bible. One of them. But he wrote, if you go back into James chapter 2, in verse 26, he also said, "As the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without deeds is dead." And it's so much more than just how are we living our lives if we're Christians, if we say we're Christians, how are we living our lives? Yes, wonderful. Are we spending time with God? Are we meditating? Are we grateful? Are we praying? Are we praising Him? Fantastic. But also, how are we living every other moment of the day? Are we acting on our prayers, our faith? In other words, I realized, wait a minute, that's why I've had so much healing. Yes, I had to change my diet. And as Dr. Barry will talk about, and it's so true, the 80% that is key is the right diet, whether it is what he calls the proper human diet, which honestly should be mainly animal sources of fatty protein, maybe dairy if you can tolerate it, and that's it. And there may be some vegetables that are very low in carbohydrates, they're not overly starchy, things like asparagus or broccoli, onions, tomatoes, that if you can tolerate and you enjoy, go ahead, have some. Fair enough. But if you don't want those things, you don't have to have them. But if we're eating a proper human diet, which is not highly refined seed oils, which is not added sugar, which is not processed and prepackaged food, okay? That's not what we're intended to eat. It should be whole, real food, right? That's the 80%. And then of the 20% left, I think it's important to split that in between move and do it outdoors as much as you can, and spend time being mindful. If you're a Christian, pray, praise, meditate, dig into the scriptures, not because I'm telling you, but because out of gratitude, right? And the two go together. They work hand in hand. But for me, I know when I was at my sickest, and when I was at my most inflamed and in the most chronic of my pain, when my Raynaud's, my fibromyalgia, my IBS, my anxiety, my depression, my bulimia was at its absolute worst, the first thing I had to do was change my diet. Because I was so inflamed and my fibro fog was so bad, I simply could not be mindful and have faith. So I had to take action first. Some people maybe aren't in that place, and maybe for them, they need to pray first or meditate first and make those plans, those steps to then take the next bit of action, which could be gradually changing your diet. I decided to change it kind of almost all at once. To keto, and then from keto to carnivore, because I realized I just don't do well with any sort of plant. I don't. There are some people who can tolerate certain plants, and if they are doing well and feeling amazing, good for them. I cannot. Therefore, I don't. And I realized that pretty quickly. So after 2 weeks of being on keto, I transitioned right into carnivore. And I have felt amazing ever since. And within the first month, yes, I saw some weight loss. Yes, some of my inflammation and pain was reduced. But the biggest change for me was I got my mind back. My fibromyalgia fog was completely gone. And then everything else started to slowly improve. So for those of you who have not seen any of my other videos, which maybe, by the way, check them out. I try to be encouraging and informative if I can. One of the biggest things for me throughout this process was that I was actually carnivore for 2.5 years, and I'm still on all my medications for pain, all my antidepressants and thyroid medication and statins and everything else. And it was a year ago when I finally decided, wait a second, I am being swayed by fear. What if I stop the medication and I feel worse? What happens? Instead of realizing, wait a second, I feel so good, maybe I don't need these things. And I very slowly, gradually came off everything. I have been 100% medication free for a year, and I feel fantastic. And it's been a blessing. Every day, just trying to walk in faith, walk with prayer, with purpose, staying true to the carnivore diet, tweaking where I need to. I am somebody who enjoys coffee, but my breakfast would be a large cup of coffee, which I knew would make me feel less hungry. But what was happening was I couldn't figure out why I was so tired. And it's because I wasn't consuming enough food because the caffeine was telling me I'm not that hungry. So I was under eating constantly. And actually, whilst I was under eating, I gained a good 10 pounds. Now that's since come off, and I'm building muscle and I'm getting stronger. But I've been able to, and that being a part of the Steak and Butter Gang, through Billama, again, Steak and Butter Gal, being a part of their group for a couple of months, what I learned primarily was the importance of eating breakfast first, making sure there was plenty of fat, making sure I eat something for lunch and for dinner, and if I'm going to have coffee, afterwards. And it's so great because now I'm at the point where I will have breakfast. I'll have a whole chicken breast chopped up with a couple of fried eggs, like scrambled type fried up eggs, and then I'll add a big slice of butter, just kind of melt it all together, and I sit and I take my time and I eat it. And that's also when I will take time and pray, or I'll have a Bible study, or I'll listen to worship music. And it just makes me so grateful to be alive. And then I give it an hour or so, and then I get up and I get on my exercise gear, and I get the dog sorted, and we go out and we take a nice long walk, a walk that's almost 2 miles long. It's about 1.8, 1.9 miles. And I do that every single morning. And I have done for several months. And I feel amazing. And I just, instead of being so worried and so afraid of what might happen if I allow myself to get better and to start to heal, I just thought, wait a second, but what if I feel good? What if this helps? What if I feel even more amazing? And taking that mindset instead. And so I had prayed a year ago for God to please help me so I could walk enough that I would never need my wheelchair again and have energy and strength. So if I go on holiday with my husband, he doesn't have to push me. We don't have to deal with the wheelchair at the airport. And I can just enjoy life as I once had 10 years back before I was injured. And the amazing thing, I could pray that all I wanted, but if I wasn't trying to actually get up and move and make effort to increase my mobility, then I wouldn't be. And so now, every single day, every morning, at least once every day, I take the dogs out for their 1.8-mile walk. And 3 days a week, once I drop the dogs back at the house, I carry on for a total of anywhere from 6 to 7.5 continuous miles. And I feel amazing. I reached 7.6 miles yesterday. And I felt fantastic. That's continuous. Okay, that's just the morning. Then I come back, shower, get dressed in regular clothes, and then I'll probably still take the dogs out again in the afternoon if the weather's decent. If not, I might walk into town for errands gyms, or I might walk into town for coffee. So I'm tracking my mileage, but I'm doing every day, I'm doing anywhere from 5 to 10 miles every day. Some of it's continuous, some of it isn't, but it all adds up. And it was Kelly Hogan's, several of her videos that inspired me. I don't have to do 10 miles straight continuously every single day. In fact, that's probably too much because I don't want to put my body into fight or flight or have my cortisol shoot up because I'm overdoing it. So that's 3 days a week. And the other 3 days, I'll take the dogs out for a walk, take them back to the house, and then I walk down the hill. It's about 0.3 miles to the gym. And then I go out and I do my resistance training circuit. It takes me about 40 minutes. But I'm working on, strengthening my arms and my legs and my abs and everything. And so I stretch everything out. And then I take a long way back home. So I usually put in about 3.5 miles between the dog walk to the gym, and then a long sort of circular way home. And then I might go out again later in the day to, again, get the groceries for the week, or if I have errands to run, or if I just want to get out and get mobile, or I'll take the dogs out again. So even though I'm not technically doing a 6-mile or 7-mile continuous walk, I'll still end up doing easily between, 5 and 8 miles that day. But I don't feel like I'm overdoing it. And I'm just walking. I'm just enjoying being outside and in the fresh air. And the other day I went out and as soon as I went out on my own, so yesterday, walked the dogs, took them back home, swapped out my hiking boots because the trail is kind of hilly and gets muddy. So swapped my hiking boots for my running shoes. And the moment I stepped out the door, it started raining. Well, I'm already ready to go. So, all right, fine. Put my hood up, had my hat on, put my hood up, put some gloves on, and I just walked. And I loved it, and I felt fantastic. And, and after being in a wheelchair for 9 years, to be able to be mobile like that was an amazing victory. And I claim no credit for myself other than I was at least smart enough to listen to God, to pray to God, and then let His Spirit direct me to start getting more active, to think, hey, wait a minute, maybe I don't need the pain medication. Let me see how I do if I cut it back slowly from last year. To, well, I can walk a block. Hey, why not? I can walk a block. I can walk around the block 3 days a week. Maybe I can go a little further, 3 days a week. Oh, actually, I'm going to start to walk the dogs. I can do that, not as far as I do now. I can walk a half a mile with the dogs. I can walk a half a mile with the dogs once a day. I can walk a full mile with the dogs. I can actually now do almost 2 full miles with the dogs, where when we get back to the house, they're wiped. They just collapse on the floor and they just want to sleep. And for me, I'm warmed up. I'm ready to go. And I'm so thankful for that. But again, for me personally, because of where I was at, and if this is where you're at, I hope you hear this. I had to first change my diet because I was so inflamed. I had so much brain fog. I had so much pain. I was so trapped in my prison of fear that if I did anything, it would make it worse. I wasn't ready at that point. I had very little faith. And I was convinced that this was it. It's the end. I'm just going to be a burden forever. And that was it. And I did not have a lot of hope or joy in my life. And eating inflammatory foods did not help. So for me, the first thing I had to do was I had to change my diet. And although keto did start to show some improvement, getting all the plants out of my life made all the difference. So when I went carnivore wow, it was amazing. And even then, like I've shared, and I'll say again, it isn't as though I suddenly felt like I could come off all my meds right away. Some people, when they go carnivore, they feel like they can quit their medications almost immediately. I didn't. I still had chronic pain. There was still healing to do. There was still inflammation that had to go. I had to give my body that time. And that's okay. That's what I'm realizing. It's okay. We all heal and we all repair at different levels and at different speeds. And mine took a while. But once it did, and once I realized that, wait a minute, maybe I don't have to live with these symptoms. Rebecca Heichman, Tailored Keto Health, she herself, along with a bunch of other autoimmune conditions, she also had really bad fibromyalgia before she went carnivore and healed. And she reversed her symptoms. Bart Kay had fibromyalgia, and it was so bad he could barely get out of bed. So he suffered to the same level that I suffered, and yet he reversed those symptoms. And he was playing in men's league rugby. He was getting active. He was getting fit. He was getting healthy. And you know what? That's what I wanted. And so it took time, but then I got there. And I guess I felt like I had to make this video because I'm just feeling very thankful and very grateful for where I'm at today. The amount of mileage I'm able to do after being, like I said, in a wheelchair for 9 years. For 9 years. Haven't used mine now since November at all. I walk everywhere I can. And if it's truly too far, then I get a ride. But otherwise, I walk everywhere I can, as much as I can. And it just builds up, and it builds the muscles and the strength and the resilience, and I just feel so incredible. And that's what I was reminded of when I was reading through the book of James today. That we need to have faith. We need to have the faith that, yes, we can. If we make the right choices, we can actually heal. God has designed our bodies in such an amazing way that almost everything we encounter, we can heal from. And it doesn't always have to require medicine. Sometimes it does. Absolutely. And there's a place for it, without a doubt. But sometimes it doesn't need anything that complicated. It can be, for me, and for many others who have gotten through similar experiences, it is as simple as first starting with the right nutrition and feeding our bodies what it actually needs and requires versus the processed inflammatory stuff that we have been giving it. It's about finding ways to start moving and getting outside as much as possible. And prayer and meditation and faith are also important. And they sort of all work together. Like for me, I have not to say that I never will, but I have not struggled with depression or anxious thoughts to the level that I used to. They're not debilitating for me anymore. I will probably always be someone who is an anxious person, who wants to know every detail of every plan. I want everything planned to the last moment, as far out in the future as possible. That's just me. It always has been. And it probably will continue to be, to my husband's frustration, no doubt. However, I can also take a step back and go, you know what? That'll be sorted. And we have a week. I don't need to panic. That'll be fine. This will be looked after. I don't need to micromanage every aspect of life, which is been me in the past. And when I've learned to do that and go, you know what, God's in control. He is. And so I might still have anxious moments. And I think to say that I never will is ridiculous, because I'm sure I will. But it's not debilitating. And I don't feel it pulling on me like it once did. And that's because of faith, but also action. When I get out and I'm walking or I'm working out at the gym, I feel great. It is so helpful for my overall positive outlook and just mental positivity, if you will. And it makes sense because that's a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists will suggest to people who struggle with these things, even if they do need medication, they should also try to get exercise. And if they're going to, they should get outside as much as possible. It helps, it really does. You get those really good endorphins and dopamine and all those good things going that help keep the brain happy and, overcome those things. And so that's been amazing for me. And I have strength and energy and things I never pictured that I could have. And I certainly never would have believed it 10 years ago. Even a year ago, I didn't necessarily think it could happen. And yet, here we are. So, having faith and deeds. So, pray, meditate, ask God to help you have faith that you can be healed, but then also be willing to make those steps, whether that is getting more active, whether that is adjusting, fine-tuning, or completely changing what you eat. And that might, for some of you, that might be the case. I don't know. But I just feel so very lucky to be where I'm at in life right now. And I just wanted to share this with you guys. I really hope that it encourages you, that you feel inspired, not because I'm amazing. I mean, if you think so, thank you, but it's not because I'm amazing, it's because God is working in an amazing way in my life. And that's it. I just share that with whoever wants to listen. And I hope this is encouraging, and if there's anyone that you feel like it could be helpful for, feel free to pass it on. And I will see you guys in my next video, which, let's be honest, will probably be in another couple weeks. I might have something before then. We'll see. But I hope you guys have a brilliant Saturday. And thank you so much for all your support and your kind words and your comments. I always appreciate getting them. All my best to you guys. And I will see you guys next time. Bye for now.